Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Get Chatting podcast. Before we get into the seriously great conversation in this podcast we've got for you today, I'd like to just request a few things. If you could just go to our social medias and check it out, hit like, comment, subscribe on our latest videos, that would be great. So we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you can find a podcast, we are there under Let's Get Chatting. If you do like the content, please give it a like, give us a subscribe, hit the notification button so you can get all of our latest episodes, rate us on Spotify, iTunes, and those sort of bits and bobs, and just support us as much as you can. We appreciate you listening. Let's get into the episode. What's happening, peoples? Welcome to another episode of the Let's Get Chatting podcast. Today we've got me, Jamie B, and we've got Rick with us, all the way from the USA, baby. We're loving it. I'm just going to run through a little intro on Rick himself, just so everyone's got a little bit of like an idea what Rick's about, and yeah, we'll go from there. So Rick is a jazz pianist, a composer, and a visionary. He's the founder of Jazz for Peace and literally performed on the stages in Carnegie Hall. Is that correct, Rick?
Say it again now, the last part.
It says from my research that you performed at Carnegie. Is it Carnegie Hall?
I performed at a lot of places. One of the places that Jazz for Peace is notable for is a concert at the United Nations.
Oh wow! Okay, interesting.
Where we brought Palestinian, Israeli, and American jazz musicians together, along with musicians from other cultures, etc.
Okay, yeah. So I might, because it just says, you know, that you've used your music to bridge between cultures, and you've used it for like healing after like tragedies, that sort of thing, and you're just using it like Jazz for Peace is perfect. You're just trying to cause peace. You know?
Well, I'm suggesting that we use it the way it's always been used. I mean, we cut off. We are the one who's kind of minimalized music to basically sell beer and, you know, pure entertainment and all that stuff. I mean, that was our capitalistic idea. You know, if you go back in cultures, I mean, they've used it to heal people. They've used it to solve problems. They've used it for medical. I mean, it has all kinds of, and one of the most important things that we were talking off camera about is it raises your human consciousness at at a high level. I'm talking about music at a reasonably high level. It can raise your human consciousness, and that's what we were talking about before with this 3D, 4D, and 5D levels of human consciousness that we really have to get to, or I don't know what's going to happen.
Something's going to happen. And obviously the other thing that we're going to be talking about today is Rick was actually on the ground for 9/11, which is fucking nuts to me. Like, that's crazy. So we're going to get into all of these sorts of things, because I think 9/11 was a big inspiration for you, wasn't it, with regards to your music journey and that sort of.
Well, it did, just because I had nothing to show for it but a bunch of words on a piece of paper. So I'm like, what am I going to do with these words? And then I thought, well, I read the words that I wrote. I just wrote them in little increments while I was watching it from a rooftop less than a quarter of a mile away. And I just wrote this, that. And then I'm like, I think I'll just call it a poem called Jazz for Peace. So I think I'll just call it Jazz for Peace, you know? And then that took on a trajectory because, you know, it's like, okay, what am I going to do with this poem? You know, and then now I recited it at a jazz festival for over 8,500 people. And then it was like, okay, you know, someone else was like, well, are you going to put it to music? And I said, okay, I guess I could do that for your event. And then, you know, okay, now what, you know, then the press comes out, Delarada starts out concert with Jazz for Peace. Okay, now what? So there's always been now what? What are you going to do next? You know? Yeah. So that's, you know, if you say, what are you going to do next about 2,000 times, you'll end up where I am right now.
It's like the proverbial dangling of the carrot, isn't it? Just constantly there.
Well, it's just like you're here and it's like, okay, what, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's just it's a natural progression. That's kind of the way we are, human nature, right?
It's a good way to live, isn't it? Because if you're not living with that what next mentality, you are just going to be stuck on that path. Yeah. You're going to be stuck there, aren't you?
Yeah, well, you know, the thing is, when you have a poem that you wrote under such auspicious circumstances, you kind of have it's kind of the most purposeful thing on your, you know, on your calendar that day or whatever. You know, doing something with that is more purposeful than, let's say, you know, grocery shopping.
Yeah. In my house, anything's more purposeful than grocery shopping. I can guarantee you that. Okay, cool. Should we get back? Let's go to the start. How does Rick start music? Do you come from like a musical family, anything like that?
I was basically about 6 years old, and I was waiting for Santa Claus, trying to catch him, because every year I was falling asleep and waking up and like, damn, I missed him this year. So this one year I was really trying to stay awake. And I did notice that something was coming in the front door that was very large. And the guy moving it was kind of fat and heavy set. That kind of all, do you know what I mean? Like everything was checking off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Christmas Eve, late at night, fat person moving large object into door because can't fit it down the chimney. This is all making sense to me.
Sure,
and I'm
yeah.
like, cool. I got a glimpse of Santa Claus, and I don't want to get caught by my parents, so I'm going to cut my losses. But the next day, I did see the giant thing that they brought in, and I started messing around with it. So that's where it all kind of started on a Christmas day.
Oh wow. Okay. And the giant thing was that
the piano.
Okay, cool. That makes total sense.
Yeah, they were moving a piano into the front door. Somehow trying to get this piano from outdoors into the front door into the living room on Christmas Eve.
I thought he was going to say like a plot twist. It was a burglar or something like that.
Yeah, I mean that wouldn't have really led me to music. That would have either led me to become a bank robber. Become a burglar, depending on how well the guy did that day, or become a cop that arrested burglars.
Yeah. Brilliant. So you got this piano, and do you come from like a musical family?
I do. Yeah. My mother played the piano. My father was a really good musician on the French horn, classical musician, before he went into the practice of law.
Oh, okay. That's a big difference.
It's a big, I don't know if he realized what a big difference that is. I mean, you're kind of searching for the truth in music, and you're kind of searching for, a W in law.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, well, talking about lawyers, they're all just searching for the win, aren't they? They don't care about the truth, most of them.
Lieyr is what the spelling is that I learned.
Yeah. That's
for 90% of them. Because really our situation today is, I don't know how much it's really screwed up by lawyers, because they are able to, help people to really mess things up. Well, the corporate document itself is really a disaster, because it protects people from liability who otherwise would be liable themselves. It protects them from liability to do things that they would otherwise be directly, responsible for.
Yeah, no, sure. And I think the fact that you can pay people, essentially a lawyer in my head, especially a defense attorney or something like that, I don't believe you should be able to defend someone is like in the wrong, but they can.
Yeah.
And that's so disgusting.
Yeah. Well, on the one hand, you are allowed, that should be everyone should be allowed a defense, because, we don't always know. I did a concert once, after I got involved with Jazz for Peace, I started to help outstanding causes, and that really opened up my mind as to what's going on in the world,
Okay.
Because really, we were talking about captured entities off camera. A lot of outstanding causes are really just captured. They're captured. In other words, you have, we're from Oceania and we're fighting to save our ocean. Well, how come the ocean keeps getting worse and worse and every year that you're saving and it gets worse? Well, that's because their biggest donor might be BP Oil. Well, if BP Oil is your biggest donor, what chance do you have? So that's a captured organization, or an example of one.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But I did a concert once for an organization called Innocence Matters or something like that. The Innocence Project. I forgot the name.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of the Innocence
Project.
Project.
Yeah.
I think Joe Rogan interviewed somebody who deals with it, so that's where I've heard it.
They brought the whole front section, the front rows, like the first row, second row, maybe part of the third row, but at least the first two rows, were all people lined all the way across. All of them had been let out on DNA, because the DNA thing had happened, and some of them had spent 15 years in jail. Then all of a sudden the DNA evidence was good enough that they could allow it to be admitted. And they were like, see, guys, I told you it wasn't me. You know what I mean? So, if that guy, if we just looked at him as guilty and didn't give him an attorney, forget it. But the problem is the quality of the attorneys representing the bad guys, as opposed to the quality of the attorney when you can get a public defender, if you can get one. That's where the problem is. And the public defender world is rigged too. They've got that. They'll have a big giant list of 1 million people, but there's nobody really there. There's a bunch of empty. they're just a bunch of empty, like pictures, like whatever,
Yeah.
and empty buildings, or kind of.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that makes
nothing
total
really
sense.
in there. I mean, good luck actually finding one out of those 850 names that are on there.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, even with like these public defenders who are free, who are given to you, it's very much like that's just them. They don't care. It's just their job.
Mhm.
Well,
You know.
they'll also say, the firm will allow 20 hours of public defender, they'll allow that, So great. What happens after your 20 hours is used up?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
there's a lot of ways you can lose on this planet. And that's why we have a lot of the messes we have. A lot of it is, I see, it's kind of like poetic justice, right? When you see these addicts that are like right in front of Silicon Valley, like here is this billionaire, like he has to step over these people just to walk out of his building, if he even goes in his building, I mean, they're in a weird way, they're kind of making a statement. I mean, it's horrible to see, but they are like a poster boy of something that is not what it was talked up to be.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, with regards to your musical career, so how's that gone? If you just talk us through your journey, just as fast or as long as you like, tell us how you got to where you are. Let's go to the day. Let's go to 9/11. So, from the start of your musical journey to 9/11, tell us what that was, and then we can dive a little bit deeper and go.
Well, that started out, first of all, like I was born, there was a middle class in the world. So like I've been alive through like really just a wipeout of middle class life all around the world. So that's a huge change. But I was born into something that, had somewhat of a functioned somewhat
Yeah,
decently.
yeah,
So basically, as I was improvising myself just on my own, so I was already involved in, creative improvisation, and I didn't want to get away from that because, again, I noticed that even as a 7-year-old, just playing and listening, I was like, again, it was raising my human consciousness. It was like a raising of human consciousness to challenge myself with music that way, in the creative way. But then my
yeah.
parents kind of caught me messing around and sneaking around on it, so they put me in piano lessons. And then I had the classical music, but then I also was kind of channeling those people, Mozart and Chopin, and I could feel them in the 1800s and 1700s and 1600s, Bach, and I was like, wow, this is weird that you can go from a piano into other eras and actually feel the person, like channel that person or feel that person's presence,
Yeah, I
what
think
it was
with
like. So
music, it's like a frequency thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
it
feel like it's
definitely
a
is, yeah.
vibration and frequency with music. It does something.
Like when you get your hair standing up on your arms and that sort of with certain
Yeah.
music, it's like I like that track, or and it does something. Your hair stand up, and it's all
Well, and it'll also take you to the era when it was composed, or when it was, the composer, and when it was done,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
it came from. So then I also had the music on the radio, which I liked a lot, and all my friends. I noticed that my friends would listen to it, and my friends liked it, and I thought maybe, girls seem to like it. That's a plus,
Oh, yeah.
So I was attracted to that, and so the next thing I knew, I had a paper route. So I was, I had that was a little job. I had a little bit of income, and I would
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of like try to get my mother to help me save some money or have a little bank account or whatever it is. So I had that going, but then the next thing I knew, my homeroom teacher wanted me to play in his son's band, who had like play at the dances, the school dances.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then another grown-up band, they came up to my mother and they were like, listen, we need him. We'll sneak him in and sneak him out of the places. We'll keep an eye on him. We'll pick him up. We'll bring him back. Don't worry, he'll be fine. And I started going into these, grown-up places to play with the grown-up bands for private parties, or sometimes
Yeah.
places where you had to be 18, but like, you're not going to have a piano player. You're not going to have a keyboard player if you enforce this rule too strictly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So-
yeah. It wasn't as dangerous back then either. Today's days, like, I wouldn't allow my kid to do that. No way. It's a different time.
Right. That's true. See, that's another thing. See, back then it was different. It was very different. I mean, people were there just were certain things. It was too crazy. The stuff that we hear about today was way beyond anything you would ever think of back then.
Yeah. It was a
So-
safer time.
Yeah. And so then my mother did kind of dump the church organist position onto me. And when that happened, I was like, my paper route days were pretty much over with.
yeah.
I've been a musician ever since then. and through all kinds of ups and downs. I mean, the problem with music for me is the same problem that Mozart and others had, which I wrote about in this book. It's called Paving the Path for Peace Through Music.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't write the book, but I wrote the foreword. And basically it's about Mozart and the difference between Mozart and just someone who was given a musical instrument by his father just to grow and play, and not necessarily to become a child prodigy the way Mozart was given a musician, an instrument. But it's an interesting foreword. It's only like 2 pages long, but it's a unique perspective from an artist's perspective on, the value of embracing the arts and culture. But anyway, so I ended up in one thing after. I mean, it's just doing a lot of stuff ever since. But like I said, you do grow out of things, and you often, you see it actually when you watch these videos of these rock and roll guys and all the trouble they had, trying to make millions of dollars when they hated each other. You ever hear these bands? Because their spirits are not aligned anymore with that music, with that time period, with each other, but they have to pull it together to try to make money. And even they can't, they still can't make it through the tour, no matter how much you pay them. So that's the weird thing about music is it is a spiritual journey ultimately, as much as we try to ignore that.
Yeah, and I think with like the money side of things as well, there's so much money in music that I think it can taint the art itself. 100% I would say that. Like there's certain musicians that if you just look at like just rock or pop nowadays, you can take someone like the most basic of basic. Let's go Justin Bieber for an example. Okay, his not my type of music, but when he first started, everybody loved him. He was great, right? That money started rolling in. What's he done?
Yeah, changed him.
What has he done? That money's come in. He's turned to this famous artist, famous guy, and then all of a sudden the music's dropped off. He's and that's just
his house in poor health.
Yeah, that's just what money can do. And if you're not doing it for the love of the art,
that money can't fix.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that it can't fix, and then there's so many other things that it causes that you didn't know about, that you're not ready for, that you're not prepared for.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that one woman from the UK, right? The 26-year-old died of alcohol poisoning, Amy Winehouse.
Yeah.
Oh my God, right? I mean, give me a break. I mean, what more could you have given that woman? And she did the complete opposite that you would ever want. I mean, she did what somebody would do maybe who was completely ignored and had nothing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that 100%. Person would have gotten too serious about their failure and done what she did.
Yeah.
But she drank herself to death at age 26, which I believe is the same age as Jim Morrison.
27. The 27 Club.
There's this 27 Club. 26 thing. Now, I don't know if I have I don't know.
Kurt
Cobain, James Morrison.
Is that the age, 27?
27.
And was she 27?
Yeah, they call it the 27 Club, yeah.
She's part of the 27 Club, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sure she is.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
That is the strangest phenomenon. Like,
so bizarre. It's so bizarre.
So do you feel like with like music, do you feel like it was something that was just there within you?
Well, I did, and this could have even been before that piano arrived. I'm pretty sure it was. I just remember kind of dancing around with my grandmother and aunt, and we were dancing around to some music, and it might have been the Beatles or something. And I just remember it was like, who the hell are those people that are bringing us all this joy? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's a way forward for me. If I could be one of the people who brings all the joy to people, dancing around and doing what we're doing, maybe. So I know I did think about it.
Yeah.
It's a possibility. It's really hard to say. It's a good question. But I do know that music is a place where you can raise your your consciousness, because I was having that situation when I was a kid, and I'm supposed to go out and meet my friends because it's Friday night or whatever, and I really was like, wow, I'm getting so much out of like this piano and this solitude and this communication with the piano and the music I'm making. And it's like, but I kind of got to go out there and see what's going on. And I would go out there and see what's going on, but I was actually lowering my overall human consciousness level to go and do that. you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, I would go over there and probably, strike out, drink too much beer, do something stupid, whatever, and even lower it further. But it was like all downhill from when I left the piano. Not that I regretted it, because I did want to meet my friends. I did want to have fun.
Of
I
course,
did want to talk. I wanted to do all that, but I wasn't going uphill,
No, of course.
I'd be lucky to stay even if that was, I was hanging on to whatever level I was at.
Yeah, no, I get you. Like the thing with like the reason I ask that is I do feel like I believe there is a path for everybody. I think I spoke about this on the last episode, but I will reiterate the point. Like I do believe there is a path for everybody. There is multiple forks in the road, don't get me wrong, but I do genuinely believe we're all born with a feeling of being what we should be. I personally do for myself anyway. I every day of my life, if I believe I am made to do something. So I was just wondering if that's like a thought that you had with regards to the music.
I think you're onto something, because I do meet these people now. I was telling you that from my podcast that are into stuff like tapping into the Akashic records, and these are records of past lives. And people come to them for like consultations and stuff, and they'll tap into it and start telling them all these crazy things about past lives and stuff. And so they're obviously together. I mean, I have one episode coming out in about a month where this woman basically, this couple came in and they said, all we do is fight. And we've been fighting for like 20 years. And I don't know what to do. If we should break up, we should just call it a day. I mean, we're never going to stop fighting. She goes to the Akashic Records and she says, oh my God, you two think you've only been fighting for 20 years. You've been fighting for hundreds of years, not even as man and woman. You were a man in some of your past lives. And then she said, your biggest fights had to do with giant swords and pirates and swashbuckling and stuff like that. And then they said, my God. And she's like, why? What's up? They said, well, there is one time that we get along. And I'm like, what? She's like, when is that? She's like, when we both love to watch old sword fighting movies.
Wow.
And they like look together on net. Oh, let's watch this one. And they sit for hours in front of the freaking giant screen watching these wild sword fighting pirate movies from hundreds of years ago. That took place hundreds of years ago. You know what I mean? Fighting in the sea or whatever they were, swashbuckling, whatever, all that stuff. All what she was describing, basically, they spent hours watching it, and they just sit there in silence watching those sword fights, massive fighting back in. So I have no idea, but, there's something strange going on with all that.
I'm starting to get worried now because me and my partner, we only love each other when we're sat watching like serial killer documentaries. So I'm starting to get worried. Okay, cool.
No, but that is a bit weird though, like all that past life stuff. I'm into all of that, like with the numbers and all of that. Like, I don't know, with like the number 29, it means like you have like numerology and that sort of stuff. We have like multiple lives, if like 11 life path and all this. Like, I don't know if you've looked into that, Josh, or not.
No, a little bit. I mean, I believe in like the reincarnation factor. Yeah, if you were to ask me, there's too many things I've seen online, and I know it's all like online or whatever, but there's too many things that like I've seen like of kids like knowing places where they've never been, and you're just like mind blown. So I definitely believe that. So is it just like you've just been sort of just on a musical journey ever since then I assume?
I have. I've been on a musical journey, but like I said, Jazzerpeace woke things up a lot further, because now I'm putting my music with outstanding causes and trying to, help outstanding causes all around the world.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing that we could solve almost every problem that's out there through the amounts of people that are passionate about that specific thing, whatever the problem is. I mean, there are over 1 million nonprofits. There are something like 80,000 here in New York City or something like that, registered nonprofits. Now, let's say 90% of them are, garbage, you know what I mean? Or captured entities, or people trying to write money off their taxes or whatever. But I've done over 850 concerts to help the world's most outstanding causes, and I've met people that are extremely dedicated. And not only that, I've seen how rich they are on the inside from following their passion in life. And I see how rich I am on the inside from working with them on all these outstanding causes. So now I know, hey, there's a ton of people that would be into this kind of thing if we would open up. And, here's the bottom line. If we would fund peace at 100% and war at 0.
Yeah.
Hey, that's true, but you know what they say? War makes money, right?
Well, in this type of setup that we have, we have a setup that, basically we're funding war at 100%. No one disagrees with me at all. And we're funding peace at 0%. So, I'm able to say things now that like, hey, you can get mad at me, but good luck debunking me. I mean, go for it if you can. But, I can show you a web page of what I've done at 0. And I just say, you go to jazzforpeace.wordpress.com. So it's not jazzforpeace.org, which is our website, but jazzforpeace.wordpress.com/about to get to the exact page. And you'll be at a page. I don't say a word on that page, but you'll scroll forever. You'll never get to the bottom of it. And this is what I've done at 0. That's at 0. So could you imagine if peace was funded at just 1%? At 1%,
no, of course.
you wouldn't even recognize this world. You wouldn't recognize our planet if it was funded at 1%. Because you have to realize, when you're funding something at $1 trillion, and we don't even know how many trillions, right? What the hell is 1% of that?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
This is 0. What I did, that's 0. So 1%. If you that would, an exponential function of that, it would just blanket the earth.
Yeah, no, 100%. It sounds like a similar message that John Lennon was trying to sort of get out at some points as well. He was trying to put music for peace. That was
who was trying to do. Lennon.
Lennon.
India. I just on something from India, and they were talking to me about John Lennon. Say we think you're very similar to John Lennon, and you remind us of his mission and all that stuff. Yeah,
well,
no, John Lennon absolutely was. Yeah, for sure. Well, the bottom line is, all through time, there's musicians who have been onto it. But then again, we're also related to the Gandhis and the Martin Luther Kings. I mean, all these people are related. And I think they're related because what happens is music does take you to that higher level of consciousness. So you're constantly being pulled up into a higher level of consciousness. And what some of the people that I've been interviewing lately are saying is, we need to just stay up there. We shouldn't be just be boing, 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 like a rubber band. You know what I mean? We're at a lower level of consciousness, and rather than pulling ourselves down or fishtailing along, we have the potential. We need to be at a higher level of consciousness. And just this one I just had on was 3D, 4D, and 5D. We are at 3D according to her, and D is, 5D is where we should be, but we're at, and anyway, D is where, so what happened is I played live for her, and I asked her to give it the number, whatever the number is on her chart, and she started at 20 with these really, low level energies that we have, and the performance was at 540. So if I'm bringing myself into the 500s all the time, again, that's raising my, that's boosting me all the time. So that's how, probably why I'm so overly optimistic at times.
That's what we like. Over optimistic is the best way to be. And I think regarding like talking about like the levels, or if you want to call it frequencies, whatever you want to call it,
right?
They're pushing us down with all the shit, the food, the shit food, the social media, you can go to the fluoride, the news, all of this stuff they're using is just constantly putting you down. I mean, we spoke to somebody not long ago, didn't we, Bix? And he doesn't eat junk food. He eats only natural, like doesn't have fluoride, only drinks filtered water, all this sort of stuff. I mean, if you spoke to him on the street, you would think he was fucking nuts, but he is up there. Like his levels are boom, and there's so much stuff that they put out there to lower what I believe.
Because we're constantly living in fear. They just fear mongers constantly. That's the thing. And we're just
absolutely
living on this negative.
100%. What this woman surprised me with is that psychedelics can be used at a very high level. There's been talk about that, but I was surprised she had it on her radar as things that
Yeah.
could get people could do that. But then again, that goes back in ancient times too. I mean, people have been using those natural, whatever they are, peyote, indigenous people have been using that. Even animals have been using that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at even human evolution, there's certain theories, that they think of how evolution happened from, man being ape to being man. Some theories are that it was down to psychedelics. There's so much that, with the psychedelics. I mean, we've had people on who have been microdosing and they've just changed their whole life from microdosing. So there's so many things that people could do to raise their vibrations, in my opinion. Right. But the problem is we're either not allowed to do it or it's not available for us to do because control from whoever you want to call it, them, prices, all this sort of stuff. Like, why is it the healthy food is so much more expensive than the shit food?
Not only that, but did you ever notice when you look and see if something has sugar, if it has sugar added, it's cheaper to buy something with added sugar than it is with no sugar. If you try to buy the same product with no sugar added, it's more expensive.
Yeah, that is so frustrating because everybody wants to be healthy.
Sugar, they literally, it's almost like a vaccine of processed sugar. The grocery store,
Yeah,
it's like a COVID vaccine of processed sugar.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, COVID's a whole nother story, but that again is a form of getting us under control.
It is.
No I mean, look at whatever you think about Trump. Anybody can think what they want, but at least he's had the balls to release a website that told us exactly what COVID was and where all the fucking lies come from. And it's out there now.
Right. Well, the problem right now, the concern with Trump that I've been hearing only in the last 24 hours, I've been hearing it, but I think these people had it for days, is, what are they doing with all that information, that Doge deal? You know what I mean? Because Elon Musk has been in there. And man, as soon as he started pouring through that, I was like, wow, that's a lot of private information. You know, what happens if you take all that information outside of that? I mean, isn't that supposed to be confidential?
Especially if you're the world leader in AI.
Confidential? Have they always been using that against us? What are they doing with all of our information? So see, the problem is a lot of crimes are committed when people get obscene amounts of confidence, and when they feel like, okay, we have this and we'll unleash this on you if you do this or whatever. They have that next step, those next 2 or 3 steps. But the funny thing about that Doge situation that, the news will never tell you about me is that I brought Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans into the United Nations in 2002, and somebody did a synopsis of how much was spent since my concert up until now on that crazy situation over there, and it's over $3 trillion of taxpayer money. $3 trillion. Now Doge is trying to save 115 billion. They're trying to. That's not verified, but there's 2 articles that came out that said, we're trying to do that. And great, that's wonderful, but wait a minute, you know what I mean? There's $3 trillion wasted over here, and what about the military? What about the what do they say? The unmonitored, the unaudited, the completely unaudited military.
That's like your Black Rocks and all that sort of stuff,
right?
Isn't it?
Well, the military is not audited. I mean, this isn't conspiracy. This is just stuff that is you can find this on Google. On September 10th. Donald Rumsfeld got up on TV and said, that, right? He said that there was $2.7 trillion or whatever it was of they don't know. They don't have no idea.
Yeah.
Unaccounted for, right? Unaccounted for? Unaccounted for, 2.7 trillion. That's the equivalent of about 8 trillion now today. 8 trillion unaccounted for.
And where was all the records?
Right. And then the other problem is speaking of what is that? Psychedelics. There's a guy named what's his name? Cliff High. His name is, and he's talking about
suitable.
Yeah, that's a great name, right? For psychedelics. He talks about these dark money printing that's even being printed that not even being accounted for by the Federal Reserve. So in other
Yeah.
words, it's dark money off of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's so who knows where all this money's coming from. And of course there is that Israeli lobby. I mean, we don't know where they get that money. It's almost like Epstein trying to figure that out.
God, he's not a nice guy. So yeah, I mean, even if you think about like the Doge and the Elon Musk thing, if you're talking about just the information he gets, and this is the guy who's the leading tech for AI, taking everybody's
Correct.
information. That's a little. So what's happening, Rick? Is I'm actually trying to move to America.
You're trying to move to America?
Yes, and my fiance, she's an American citizen. She lives over here with me. So over the next year or two, I'm actually moving to Tennessee. So this is why I get so into this sort of stuff,
Wow.
Yeah.
It's interesting. People are trying to move to America. It's almost like is that like the abusive parent fractal? It's like the more like the child becomes more dependent on the parent. As the parent is
I think it's just this country's so shit.
What?
It's just England's just so shit, to be honest with you.
England's worse, right?
Yeah, it's horrendous. I mean, you can't even. Someone got arrested for praying in their head.
In their head.
On the street.
That's what they're doing there now.
Mm-hmm. It's
and
nuts.
How did they prove that he's praying in his head?
Well, they asked him, "What are you doing?" I stood on the street corner, and this woman said, "Oh, I'm just praying."
So they arrested for that.
Yeah, because it was near a. Was it because it was near a mosque?
Mosque, I think.
Because it was near a mosque and it was a Christian prayer or something like that. It's crazy over here.
Wow, it's awful, absolutely awful. What's going on?
Yeah,
and I saw something in the Netherlands where a woman was saying "Free Palestine," which is a right of free speech, because you have a right to say, if you're pro-Israel, no one ever messes up your speech with, no one ever accuses you of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So why can you say that? So this woman was in Netherlands and she was saying "Free Palestine," and they were covering her mouth. They were arresting her and covering her mouth. Yeah.
It's a crazy time we're in. But you witnessed an even crazier time. That was a good transition, wasn't it? So tell us 9/11. How did that day go for you? I mean, if you're happy to talk about it, it might be.
You know what? It was very much like, it was very psychedelic. It was a very psychedelic day because normally you would have to take quite a bit of blotter in order to walk up on your roof and see, the Twin Towers exploding.
Yeah, I was in school.
Yeah, it's one of them things where you can I
remember
know exactly
where
you
were.
Everyone knows where they were. Yeah, it is fascinating. It is fascinating. I just knew, to be honest with you, like you were talking about your past life or whatever, or was I meant to be, or were you meant to be a musician? The way you were saying that at the beginning, Joshua, that was kind of kicking in while I was there because I knew that very likely there is some reason why I was contacted that morning and why I was able to go up at such a proximity, and I was watching it, and words were coming out, and there was some reason why this all came together. There's probably something larger than me. And if I wasn't going to walk the walk now, when was I ever going to?
Yeah.
When? Because you see these people, I know so many people like that I say, they're so past the point of their excuse for not doing something. They're so past that point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like somebody who's, I'm going to do this as soon as I get my house paid off, right? And the next time you talk to them, as soon as I get my second vacation home paid off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like, you blew it on your first vacation home. And if you can't do it after paying, you have to get a second vacation home for what? I mean, come on. They're just like behind the 8 ball. And now they're more interested in the excuse to never be what they're supposed to be. Or
it sounds like they are. The opposite of what you were talking about yourself earlier. It's like the opposite of the what's next.
Right.
It's total like the not next.
Yes. They got, they got behind, you can get behind easily. In fact, I think if you just tread water, you'll go backwards. It's almost like a stream. You know
Yeah,
what I
I
mean?
mean, it's like me, like on a personal level at the moment with the gym. That's effectively me with the gym at the minute. As much as I like in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. There's always this one thing where I'm like, nope, nope, nope. And then you
Putting
get
it off.
the more you put something off, the more it affects you mentally, and you actually don't go because you've put it off, not because
So
of the
much.
reason you had. And it's just yeah, it's mind boggling. So you were close, right, to the
I was
tap?
less than a quarter of a mile away. So I was in the East Village. And back then, I wouldn't have thought I was that as close as I was to the World Trade Center just because New York City was so dense. And,
Yeah,
I'd have to walk to the Lower East Side. Then I'd have to walk to Soho. And I'd have to walk to this and that before I got down there. So you'd be, so many things before that. It's not like if it was like a pasture, it would be like, oh my God, it's right there. But, you have all of
yeah,
these things, and I almost never went down in that area. It was kind of a financial district, it
yeah.
wasn't. I loved the area I was in, actually. I really loved the East Village where I was living. But like I said, I found out I was less than a quarter of a mile away when there were tanks in front of my building, 5-floor walk
Jesus.
up, and I couldn't get out for weeks to go grocery shopping without giving my ID because there were
Wow.
guards and there
Mental.
were people watching it. And I'm like, how come I have to give you my ID to grocery stores right there? They said, because that grocery store is more than a quarter of a mile away, and where you are is less than a quarter of a mile away. And we've got this whole area cordoned
Yeah.
off, and you have to come in and out with an ID just to go, to do anything.
So were you visibly watching it when the impact?
Yes, the second one. So the first one, what happened is if you ever look at something called the Jazz for Peace CD,
Mm-hmm.
if you really want to see how marginalized I am, you could look at the Jazz for Peace CD because you'll see me with some of the greatest names in jazz and classical music, the London Symphony Orchestra. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
if I was, I would think if I was doing anything else, but nevertheless, if you look at that picture, you'll see me like in front of a dumpster, and that's my neighborhood. And there was a photographer who was like, hey, can I take some pictures of you for my catalog and give you the negatives? And I'm like, of course, so that happens in New York City, frequently. There's
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul McCartney's wife was one of those people before she got famous. Linda
Yeah.
McCartney. I
Yep.
mean, she
Yep.
had come from a rich family, I believe, the Eastman Kodak. But she was just waltzing around like, hey, let me take what's your name? Bob Dylan? Let me take your picture. I'll give you the negative. That's literally what she was doing.
Yeah. No,
Just
I
like
know.
she
Yeah.
was smart enough to know that if they ever became famous, her pictures she would be the only one that had the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, of
So
course.
this woman was doing that, and she had a job on Wall Street to pay for her photography habits. So she was working down, like I said, down there, down
Yeah.
that away. And she calls me that morning and basically says, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry to wake you up. I know we spent the day together. I said, look, no problem. What's going on? What's the matter? Because my phone doesn't normally ring in the morning in those days because, like, I was a jazz musician, so I work 9 to 5,
Yeah.
which is 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that was like, that was super early. So I get this phone call and I like, look, let me just go up because I thought, let me calm this person down. I'm just going to go up on the roof and I'm on the 5-floor walk up. I'll just go up on the roof. It'll take me a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be able to hopefully just tell you that some idiot threw a rock or flew a kite in there. I'll tell you what it is. And I went
Yeah.
up there. I was like, oh my God. So
Yeah.
and that was only one tower I was looking at when I was like, oh my God. And then the next time and I'm like, what was that?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, something seriously up. And then, like I said, words started swirling around and I started purging them onto a piece of paper just to get them out of me so that other thoughts could come in.
I was gonna say, yeah, because your thoughts must have been like wild at that
Yeah.
moment. Because
Yeah.
that was like, there's a film, but I mean, the real title, like, The Day the Earth Stood Still, literally. Like that was like that
That
day
was
is
the
going to
one,
be
yeah.
cemented in history. Like, you've got 9/11, you've got D-Day. These sorts of days are going to be etched into the history of man for a very long time. So like, I mean, obviously you have done your poem, but can you describe like what was going through your head at that time?
Yeah, and other people's like thought processes.
What was
Like,
it
Well, I
like?
mean,
yeah,
like I remember one time on my birthday, someone gave me like 2/8 notes and a quarter note, and they were basically acid that was shaped as musical notes. I had never taken acid, but I was like, well, I don't know. I guess now's the time to
Fuck it,
try
it's my
it. So I
birthday. Right?
tried it, and I was with a girl from Iceland, and she tried it. And I had an amazing trip, but she
Mhm.
lost her sight for part of it. So that's why I was like, damn, I don't know if I want to
Wow.
mess around with this stuff. I don't know, I don't know, but I had a great time. I loved it. But it reminded me of that because it was so out of, you know what I mean?
That out of
this
body
world.
Yeah,
experience.
because I remembered seeing people thinking it was Halloween. Because like I'm talking to somebody, and all of a sudden I'm like, is it Halloween? Everyone's in a costume, but I was on acid, that time. Now I'm like, what's going on with these silver people? There's silver people walking up the street and they're like silver mummies.
Mm.
And I'm like, is it? But it's only September. It's not Halloween. That's what I'm thinking. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why were they dressed up like silver mummies? And then I'm like, oh my God, these are people covered in soot that
Yeah.
have walked. And again, nobody ever walked from here. That's why I said I didn't know it was a quarter of a mile, because I never walked
Yeah.
to the World Trade Center. I would never do that. I would at the worst case scenario, I'd ride a bike, but I never even did that. I mean, you get in a subway, you would get in the subway and
Yeah.
stop, World Trade Center if you want to go there. These people had walked from the World Trade Center. They're just walking uptown, and they're just walking uptown. Like, they don't have a destination.
They're
You know
just
what I'm
in
saying?
shock.
Yeah,
Just
Yeah,
shock.
they're just in total shock. They're like total shock, and it's like mummies, like from the Munsters or something. One of
Mm.
those. They're really like silver mummies, just walking in single file. And I'm like, wow, silver mummies are walking up the street. Like, what? And like I said, for a minute there, I'm like trying to make other sense of it.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no, of
are
course.
they going? What are they dressed up for? How did they get in those uniforms? Like, how did they get those? How did they get all the silver on them? You know what I mean? But like I
Yeah.
said, they're covered in soot. Their faces completely
Yeah.
bleached in soot.
Fucking hell, it's
Like, you can't even like
you can't
like,
fathom it, can
no.
you? You can't, like, me personally, I can't sit here and think of, like, I mean, the closest thing anybody will ever be able to think about that is like, like the start of the pandemic, the very start of the pandemic, when it was like, whoa, everybody's dying, oh my god, da 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 da, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is happening? Like, that's the closest I will ever get to that anyway. Or I don't know. I suppose if you were in like a car crash or something, you could imagine it was very similar. But fuck. And what was it like just in the area, like the following days? I'd imagine it was like.
I don't. Could you see anything? Was it just covered in soot?
Well, no,
there?
it was the lucky thing was the wind was blowing over into New Jersey. It was blowing away.
Right.
So there was no problem. In fact, the problems didn't start with the air until the next day and days after that. Nobody knew that area was still smoldering for months.
Yeah,
months. So nobody
Was it?
knew that. So we just thought, okay, the air's bad today, but maybe it's a bad day. It'll get better tomorrow, And no one was telling us, anything. People were saying, no, people were just saying crazy stuff that it's okay, it's safe. I don't know what they were saying, but from where I was, I mean, I had no idea that thing was going to be smoldering for months at a time.
Okay. This is a serious question now. What do you think happened?
What do I think happened?
In your opinion?
Well, I think that I think there's a lot of moving parts.
Yep.
And, there's a lot of things that don't add up. And it was very much, listen, the 9/11 Commission and what was the commission that they used for the Kennedy with the magic bullet thing? What was that? With Kennedy, right?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
What was that commission called? We'd have to Google it, but
Yeah, I can't remember what it was called.
there's so much similarity to those two commissions.
I listened to the whole commission once on a podcast for hours and hours and hours. I was just listening to it, and it was just, there's so much that doesn't add up. You can go from, am I scared
It all
of
starts like what you were saying the day before, Rick, with the Donald Rumsfeld with like the 2.6 trillion
The
going
Warren,
missing.
wasn't it called the Warren
Commission? Yeah.
The Warren Commission, I don't know which one is more bizarre. I really don't. I don't know which one is more bizarre. I mean, the 9/11 Commission was way out there. One of the first organizations that I assisted musically as Jazz for Peace was an organization that was helping. They were called September's Mission, and they were aiding the families of the 9/11 victims.
Yeah.
And this woman came to me and she said, none of the families believe what's going on, because these families, she's dealing with people who, of course, not every family member, but the family members, the people she was working with had lost loved ones that, were, you know what I mean? Like huge loss to their lives.
Yeah.
And so they were thinking about it all day long, every day. It was consuming them, and they weren't getting questions answered. And they just, they felt like they were completely, just blocked out of of the truth,
No, of course.
So was the whole area like blocked off then for like?
Yeah,
for
the whole
months?
area was blocked. Like I said, a quarter of a mile in every radius of the World Trade Center was completely blocked off. Now, if you were living there, of course you were allowed to live there. But like I said, you had to go out and come in of that quarter mile radius for quite a few months. You had to have an ID, and you had to show your ID at some street or some street corner to a police officer to get in and get out of that area. But I mean, the unanswered questions are up the wazoo related to 9/11. And the thing is, you got in so much trouble for so long if you said anything at all, no matter how little sense something made. First of all, that Building 7, I mean, who on earth would not question that? Listen.
But people don't even still know about that now. I asked my dad about that about maybe a year ago. I was like, "So what about Building 7, Daddy?" He's like, "What are you on about?" So you don't know anything. You're just watching mainstream. You don't actually know about, like with the BBC, they reported it before it even went down. Like, how mad is that? And the funny thing is, Josh, I don't know if you know this, there was a guy that didn't pay his TV license over in the UK, because you have to pay a TV license.
Yeah.
And he actually went to the court and won, because he was saying it's false news. You're false. Like you told me that something's down, and it's not. It's clearly in sight. So the BBC report was saying, "Oh, we're just hearing Tower 7's gone down," and it was still in the background behind her.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. So the thing went down, like these newscasters were just like talking or something, and they had it on there, and it just went down right in front of them. There's so much confusing stuff. Listen, I mean, there are firemen and policemen who heard explosions in those buildings, and then the way they came down. And first of all, Building 7, right? Listen, nothing there. The guy said he pulled it. It was pulled.
Yeah.
So there were all kinds of leaked information. People let stuff slip. So we had to pull it. It. Well, there's all kinds of information in there also that had to be disappeared.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of convenient, crazy things that happened. All kinds of crazy and convenient things that happened. But
Even
then again, now we realize there's so many scams that go on.
Yeah.
We're inundated. So what happens is,
well, they fucked it with COVID, didn't they?
Well,
that's the reality of it. Like, no one believes COVID. No, everybody woke up. Everybody was there, like, this is it. This is it now. Like, this is too much. And then now they're going back. Like, they're going back to like 9/11, the moon landing, all of this shit, and they're like, wow. And they're just waking, opening their eyes, going,
"Well,
what
that's
have
a
we
good
been
point."
lied to about?
But like, look at the scams that they ran even just before COVID. They were running that opioid scam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to run that was $1 trillion deal for the Sackler family, right? And this company, the Sackler family, their name is on every single arts building. So
Right.
MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, Sackler, all over the arts. That's what I mean about captured. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're on
Right.
the Sackler family. But who is the Sackler? Well, the Sackler family, they got senators and congressmen to actually vote that, what is that outrageous Oxycontin, right?
Yeah.
Oxycontin, yeah.
They voted that it was not addictive. In other words, they even voted that it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? So in other words, it's almost like getting someone to vote that 1 + 1 hereby equals 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and that's where, if you pay them, they will do it. That's why over there in Israel, in that area, there's these reports that came out where they say, they've leaked stuff where it says, if the investors will, so there's all these investors that are ready to invest all this money in those houses in Palestine, selling them,
Yeah.
they're other people's houses. They're just bombed and then they're selling it. The investors are ready to come in if they're going to guarantee their investment. They're ready to invest.
Yeah.
So, there's these reports. I mean, Netanyahu said it, in this thing, the investors, they say this stuff, and they put all these things together with, money, and the money just comes rolling in. If they feel like they're going to make money, they don't care about anything, right? They don't care about anything. Absolutely nothing. There's nothing. So now you're dealing with soullessness. So how do you win? Tell me how you win. What amount of trillions or billions or zillions can cover up an empty, hollowed out soul?
Yeah, I mean, you can't. I don't think you can now.
You cannot do it. And so what they are part of the addiction fractal, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're that person who, they're getting ready to take the woman. There was a story once. The woman's 3-year-old daughter figured out how to dial 911 and told them her mother was smoking crack in the other room. And when they came in, she was like, "I just one more hit before you take her away." These guys are at that point. They're like, one more scam. Because they're so addicted in these scams.
They've been doing it for so long. I mean,
they've been doing it for so long. They're so deep into it. You know what we're good at doing? We're not good at stopping anyone from doing anything.
No.
Nothing. But what we're really good at doing is giving them enough rope. Because all these fucking people have hung themselves right in front of us.
Yeah.
They've hung themselves.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
They have nothing. They have everything, but yet they have nothing because they've literally hung themselves. They're so deep into. They had to go to this one. They had to go to that one.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like the bank robber who robs a bank. Why don't you fucking stop? You just robbed a bank.
You've got enough money, bro. You've got enough money. Stop.
It's the rush, isn't it? The whole rush and
there's that. It's like it's never enough. I mean, look, we were talking about the marijuana earlier. It goes as far back as that. It's illegal because it was a fucking cheaper alternative to paper, and the owner of the paper owned the paper, so he could say, "Look, it's doing this, it's doing that." Like that's where it all comes from. And then you go even up to, I mean, the last thing I can remember where I was like, "Wow, what the fuck is going on here?" was the Trump assassination attempt. Like the kid was killed and gone before anyone. His house was scrubbed. He had no silverware, no cutlery. Who has no cutlery in their house?
Wow.
Like,
right. So what was that? In other words, that's the other crazy thing too they do, right? So here's this guy, he shoots this gun, and why you're right. They eliminate any, we don't even, no questions can be asked.
Yeah,
about
no.
it.
Yeah. There's no Lee Harvey Oswald in this one.
Bottom of who was behind it.
No. There's no Sirhan happening here. Like it's
because the thing about mainstream as well, it's that story lasts a week,
right,
and then it's forgotten about.
Yeah,
isn't it? On to the next story, and then it's like, they forgot about that fucker. Now we'll go on to the next one. What can we do next? What can we make these idiots fall for next?
And do you know what the biggest fucking problem with it all is? What really, really, really gets me is someone like Rick, who's trying to do something for the betterment of humanity, will never get the fucking time because it's not bad news, it's good news. And Absolutely. They don't want to show you the good shit. They only want to show you the bad stuff.
My friends, I really have to tell you something, and I would love for you to debunk this. This is the one thing I would love to be debunked of everything that is debunkable, okay?
Okay.
When you look at that page that I gave you, if you look at that, It's jazzrapiece.wordpress.com/about. I don't say any words on that. There's no words from me on that. There's nothing from me bragging or telling you or anything. Okay. Here is the question. Out of 8.6 people on this planet, okay, based on actual achievement, the question is, have I somehow become the lowest paid humanoid on planet Earth?
What and what for yourself?
I may be the lowest paid human being based on achievement. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Now,
Yes.
I'm open.
Okay.
Like I said, anybody, this goes out to 8.6 people, 8.6 billion people through this podcast. You are welcome to email info@jazzrapiece.org and tell me a lower paid person based on achievement than me on the planet Earth, and I'll be glad to say I'm the second lowest paid. I'm trying to get to be the second lowest paid, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
I agree, because I mean, even, looking at your history before like coming onto the podcast, I was like, dude, this guy's done so much, and it's like, how, like, it's because you're doing good.
Yeah.
It's because you're trying to avoid war. It's because you're trying to avoid the negative stuff. It's crazy.
It's mind-boggling. It's just absolutely bizarre. Now, at the same time, would I trade anything up? Trade anything for it? No, I wouldn't trade anything. But it would be nice if there was some sort of any kind of a parody. I mean, we are so far upside down. It is beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And the problem is, if I could get up to the second or third lowest paid human being in the world, or fourth or fifth, if I could get myself in the top 10, lowest paid instead of flat at the bottom, maybe some other people might join this activity.
Cause,
you know what I mean?
But that's why they do it. That's why they do it, because they want to push what you're doing to the bottom of the rung, because then other people aren't going to do it.
Dead last.
Mm-hmm.
Dead last. I mean, it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Wait, can you imagine the news saying all like loads of positive stuff about people? Oh, he's achieved this, he's achieved that. That would raise everyone's vibration, and then you'd have too many positive people, too many people overachieving, and they'll be like, "What the fuck is going on here?"
You're kind of really hitting the nail on the head, because I'll be honest with you, I've never heard those three words uttered on mainstream media ever. Jazz for peace.
No, they won't.
No.
They
won't say it. Now everyone who's brainwashed into their no, these people are somehow, because first of all, there's human nature. A lot of our problems are human nature related. It's human nature for us to want to be on the side of who's control, to want them to think well of us, and to want to think that they are thinking that they are, in other words, it's a 2-4 thing. We want them to like us. We want the powerful people to like us. And we want to think that the powerful people are benevolent. We would like to. Both of those are great things. It's not fun to have to, but now what happens if I read all that information and then I wonder, why the hell have they never said those three words? If they're really all that they're chalked up to be, wanting the best for humankind and people and all, how is that possible? How is that humanly
I think
possible?
that thought is true. The powerful people can be malevolent. And I believe that, if you look at, let's take Elon Musk. Okay, let's just take Elon Musk, pluck him out of thin air, right? A lot of people love Elon Musk. I love Elon Musk. Before he got into politics, brilliant. He was for the betterment of humanity. What he's trying to do now in his head may be for the betterment of humanity. That's absolutely fine. And if that's what he believes, more to it, please carry on. But the guy has so much money, he could help every citizen in America with a click of his fucking fingers. And if you wanted to help so much, click him and do it. That's my problem.
But it's down the road. I mean, look at the other ones, look at the other ones, right? I mean, we were brought up for many years. We were told that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, they were on TV every day. They're going to give away every single amount of their money. Wow. What's going to happen if they find out about me? I wonder what kind of composition, I wonder what kind of do you know what I mean? And it's like, all I've heard about is the money they made through their foundations. How do you make money giving it away?
Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that, does it?
It doesn't, nothing just, there's so many things that don't have, but you're right. If you have that much money, what the hell is possibly the other crazy thing is a lot of the money in the world, because so much of it is made, we're rewarding things that make so much money, right? But provide so little value to
Yeah,
humankind
yeah,
that a lot of the money I've heard is just stuck in giant, offshore bank accounts and just sits there. Swiss bank accounts, those islands down there,
yeah,
all those freaking islands, have these crazy ass banks with, just loaded up with people's, crime money or whatever, or money they didn't pay any taxes on, all that stuff. And then
yeah.
again, lawyers, well, what a great way to make money. There's a job for you, right? Just getting, like helping someone not pay taxes and taking a little cut off of that.
No, yeah. Makes the mafia not seem so bad, eh?
There's people who say the mafia is way better than when the government takes it over.
No, listen, I'd probably agree because, at least I'd be straight to your face.
I did a concert in Las Vegas
Okay.
for a film person. That's the amazing thing, is that I've done tons of things for things that you'll never hear of, because, again, like you said, they're not going to make it on there. Yeah. But one was a documentary about the old Las Vegas when it was run by the mob.
Yeah.
And it's testimonies of all these people who had families and put their kids through college and had this and had that. They were safe. They were blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And what happened when the government came in and got rid of the mob, okay, that's fine, except for one thing. Now, these casinos and stuff, see, the mob, when the mob ran it, they were watching the people that they were going to be firing. Do you know what I mean? These companies, the guy is sitting in, like, you know what I mean, London or somewhere, and he's just axing. He's looking at numbers and just axing all, you know what I mean, destroying people's lives and people who gave their, finding a way to screw over their pensions, screw them out of their pension. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the biggest bucks are in the biggest crimes.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it this way, and I think I'm correct in saying, like, statistically, it was safer when the mob were running things. Like, because the thing is, like, it's like, right, this area is controlled by the mob, right? This area. If I go in this area and I cause crime or do something wrong, I am more scared of the mob than I am the police.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the mob was bad. I'm not sitting here saying the mob was great, But
this is worse.
Exactly.
This other thing is worse.
Exactly.
Because I'm telling you that, a lot of these people, it's our nature to try and, somewhere along the line, we have a spine. There's something that's not completely spineless amongst us,
Yeah.
We're fucked up, but we're good, but I'm good to my family, but I'm good to this. We try to justify it,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't have to justify anything to just go whack people you never saw and you'll never meet and they'll never see you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just, there's no, do you know what I mean? You never saw them.
Yeah. No.
How are you going to feel guilty about someone you never met, never saw? Yeah.
It's all done behind closed doors, isn't it? And that's why it's so easy for them to do it.
Completely impersonal.
There's no consciousness. It's like the difference between, like I always say, there's a massive difference between shooting someone and stabbing someone. Because if you're willing to shoot someone, you're far away. It's less personal. But if you want to stab someone, you're up close and personal. That's a more vicious way to kill somebody, because you're there, you're feeling them, they're breathing next to you, Whereas if you're a sniper and you shoot them from this far away, it's just another target, right?
Yeah.
So, and that it's the same thing, they're doing it from behind closed doors. They're never meeting you. There's nothing personal about it. It's there's another tick box. But
what's crazy is that there are solutions sitting right in front of people's faces,
Mm-hmm.
And if you go back in time, you'll see people like Aristotle and Plato. Yep. And you just read what they wrote and you're like, whoa, all we would have to do is live like this. Do you know what I mean? And for example, I believe it was Plato who said that the purpose of money is to a means of exchange for a virtuous existence. In other words, you exchange this for virtue.
Yeah, yeah.
These exchanges are for a virtuous existence. So that's the meaning of money. Where are we now? We are in the toilet with that definition.
100%.
And when you look at definitions, that's where you get in even bigger trouble, right? Because right now, I looked up something called Semitic, because these people keep saying this anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They can't use it against, I know they would use it against me if they could, because they try to. Because they, there's bots that come on social media.
Yeah.
I've had these guys attack me, and I've had them, and I'm like, wow, this guy, he's talking to me, and I'm wondering how much he's getting paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because, if you're the lobby, I mean, come on, there's people that need jobs, and if you offer them enough money, they'll go, I'll be an Israeli Zionist, and they've got a script, and I'm like, this guy has no idea what the trouble he's into messing with me, because he doesn't know who I am. Because it's a cookie cutter thing, we're gonna say this, we're gonna say that, and then we're gonna peg you as anti-Semitic, you know what I mean? And for talking against us, you are anti-Semitic, And so you wouldn't believe what would happen when I'd send them a picture of my performance at the United Nations, and I'd say, now, which one of those band members do you want me to kill and slaughter their entire family?
And the response is
gone. Let me tell you something. The whole profile disappears.
Yeah.
So they disappear from the internet.
Yeah.
But see, I knew there was something weird about them, because I would go to their profile and I would see all these like little words that looked like, but nothing to back it up. Like, you can say consultant. What the fuck is a consultant? Engineer. What's an engineer? You drive a choo-choo train? An engineer could be building bombs. I mean, it could be anything, right? There's these little words, and they have all these little and they all have the same lineup of goofball words to describe who they are, whatever. The picture doesn't, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. I don't know. And like the information on it's just it's a profile that you can't really dig very deep into. Let's put it that way. You can't go deep into this profile at all. You'll go nowhere. So I see that. And then why did your whole profile, like, why didn't you just not respond? How about that? Or why didn't you just cancel, delete the conversation? They delete their entire fucking profile.
Yeah, it's bots. There's so many of them about as well. Like with regards to anything, there's just so.
But I've had anti-Israel, quote unquote. I've had there's Jewish organizations that stand for the Holocaust victims, because the Holocaust survivors are definitely against genocide.
Yeah.
And
obviously.
I know this because I used to do stuff for Holocaust survivors, and I have a letter from Michael Bloomberg, and for one of my concerts. Again, once they see that, they know they're in very big trouble, and things go downhill very fast for them. But I'll let them play as long as they want. Right when they think they have me, that's when I do that. I mean, it's game over so fucking fast for these people. But I've even had the Jewish site delete it.
No.
Yeah. So wait a minute. I'm supposed to be your fucking hero. Not only did you not call me up on who are you and how can we work with you? No, they delete the conversation because it went so badly for the person that they're supposed to be standing against.
Yeah.
So in other words, we are representing, the victims, but if things go badly for the victor, we're going to delete your conversation. You know what I mean? It makes no sense whatsoever.
I well and truly believe that for you, it's so unfortunate, but you're cancelled and shadow banned, and it's such a fucking shame because all you want to do is give out goodness,
positivity.
That's the deal. That is it, and it's crazy. And so you just don't know, because you just don't know where people stand in this, because everybody they relate. Again, I mean, sometimes I'll be working with someone on the Palestinian side, and they don't want to even consider what I've noticed, and that is that a lot of the Israelis, they can't talk against Israel. So a lot of them are even pretending to be on the side of Israel because they can't talk against it. In fact, there's a website called Soft White Underbelly. And there's
Okay.
this guy who came on just a couple days ago. He's a Hawaiian guy. And he talks about how he ended up in a jail because of some fucked up shit he did in Hawaii. And then he got hooked on meth and blah, blah, blah. And he ended up in a jail where these people told him, if you don't beat that guy up tomorrow, we're going to fucking kill you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So he would go and beat somebody up, and then he would pray and cry in his cell for hours. So in other words, this is what I mean by captured. You know,
Yeah.
this man had to do this until he got out of jail. And he
It's
told
nuts.
that story on there. So there are so many of these people. They're like the flying monkeys in The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
there are some people that are doing that and they like their place, they have their position, but there are other people that are, you know, hate. They know their hearts are hurting. They know how fucked up it is, but they can't speak out because maybe they'll kill their families or their kids or who knows. And they want to go to the next level. See, they're never satisfied ever. So they just go one step to another step to another step, you know.
Yeah.
Again, 9/11, what was 9/11 if you really want to look at one thing? What was 9/11? It was the Patriot Act.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
9/11 ushered in a Patriot Act that is renewed every year, and they all start out as temporary. All of them. They always say this is temporary. And every year they renew that Patriot Act. That enables them to just come and grab you.
Yeah, and do what they want. Like, yeah, literally, they can at any point. And it's like over here we have the Terrorism Act, I believe it is. There's some sort of terrorism act we have in this country, and effectively, they can arrest you.
Right.
You don't get your Miranda rights.
Just hold you in a cell, right?
Yeah. You don't get the option to remain silent. Yes, Bicker.
Bit like him who can't be mentioned.
That
yeah.
was not on September 7th. On September 10th, that did not exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
so
crazy.
This is what they're doing.
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah, because there's a certain person over here that's basically in jail right now. We can't really mention his name because the podcast will probably get taken down. He was a leader of the English Defence League back in the day. I don't know if you want to search that up on your side, Rick, but he's classed as a terrorist right now.
Right.
And in jail right now for releasing a
documentary
on X. You may have seen it.
Oh no, I would like to though.
Yeah.
He
Josh,
put out a documentary on X.
Yeah, he released a documentary on X, and he was told if he releases this documentary on X, he went out to Mallorca or Spain at the time, and as soon as he come back, he would be arrested and put in jail, and he's in jail right now.
Arrested under the Terrorism Act, which gives you no, you get no right to remain silent, and you have to unlock all of your devices and give them every bit of information. You don't have a choice.
What's the name of the documentary? Do you know? And how do you see it? Can you see it online?
Yes.
Yeah. So there is.
What's it called, Josh?
It's called Silenced. There's a documentary called Silence.
Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now everybody listening, you may think, "Oh, fuck that guy," whatever. But there's a documentary out there, and I'm going to tell people about it, and you can watch it, and you can feel how you want about it. Do I support it?
What's the name? If you look up Silence, what's the name? What's the name of the person? Oh, no, you can't tell the name.
Yeah.
How do I find it? Just put Silence documentary?
Yeah,
it'll be
documentary.
On there. It'll be on there. But as I was saying, if people want to say what they want about said person, well, I'm not saying I agree with everything he's done. But like anybody, you can agree with some things they've done and
no one's going to agree with everything everybody's done.
You know.
I mean, Dostoevsky had a gambling problem, but Dostoevsky was arrested, again, under similar circumstances as what you're talking about. They arrested that guy, Dostoevsky. Have you ever checked out any of his stuff?
No.
Phenomenal. I forgot, is it something? Dostoevsky is his last name. I believe, I don't know what era, maybe in the 1800s. I don't know. He wrote some of the most phenomenal, Crime and Punishment is one of his.
Oh, okay.
He wrote some of the most phenomenal stuff. I don't actually read the books. I read essays about the books because I love to read what people's, like their take on it and stuff. And there's tons of stuff. If you put Dostoevsky into YouTube, you'll see tons of, again, these different people that analyze his different books. The brothers Karamazov, they're like phenomenal historic. It's, in other words, it's like the Beethoven of literature. Dostoevsky, the Beethoven of freaking literature. And he got arrested on those kind of circumstances and thrown up in Siberia for like 9 years. There was a mock execution. He had PTSD, all that shit.
Yes.
And we're still doing it to this day. So here's the bizarre thing. Now, I have been able to warn people, and if anyone ever looks at my history, they'll see that I warned people exactly what happened, even though I'm not a psychic. I was able to see, and I did a lot of things for Julian Assange because I said, listen, if you arrest journalists, you will see a spike in civilian casualties like you would not even imagine. Unimaginable spike in civilian casualties if you don't do something. You cannot bust a person for committing journalism.
No, yeah.
So, I said it on a stage in Nigeria.
Okay.
On a stage in Nigeria, there's a video of me, and you can find the video on YouTube, and you'll see me in Nigeria. Look at the date, and look at what happened after I said that. And I said on that stage, I said, you cannot do that. You cannot arrest. And I had a problem with the New York Times right across the street from me over here because they just wouldn't come out. And finally, they did join us. But again, we are fractured because a lot of the people don't work together. Someone took my fundraising model, they put it into ChatGPT, and they said, could this fundraising model, if it was exponentially taken up by the citizens of the world, could it solve all of our world's problems? And ChatGPT answered, this and others, phenomenal fundraising models, phenomenal things, could solve all of our world's problems except for one problem, and that is the 8.6 billion of us, 99.9%, do not collaborate and communicate and organize the way the ruling class is.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. And I think that's the positive thing to come out of things like your podcast, your citizen journalism, all this sort of thing. There's a lot of that now, which does allow people to have a voice without needing to rely on a paycheck or whatnot, because they're doing it all themselves. But yeah, it's just crazy. But I think the good thing that does come from all of these negative things we've spoken about today, to try and put a positive spin on it, which I always do towards the end, is it's gave a platform. Everybody's got a platform, and everybody is now slowly waking up, and it's only a matter of time. I do believe it's only a matter of time before there's too many people who are awake, too many people who have opened their eyes.
The thing that messed them up is the internet, isn't it? That's what's really messed them up. If we didn't have any communication like how we do now, then they'll still be doing every back end of the thing that they always done before.
But we would
all these 9/11s, all these 7/7 bombings, and we wouldn't know anything. We would not know anything.
People are waking up, but the question is, what are we going to do about it? And so, I'm in a situation now where I was in 9/11, where in 9/11, I knew that I could respond if something like that happened, or when it did happen, I knew that I could respond because I knew that music cut through all kinds of boundaries, and it could create a situation where, we could avoid the behavior that leads to destruction. And I actually have a famous quote. If you put Rick Delarada famous quote, you'll see something I said a few days after 9/11 that ended up being lifted by all of the famous quotes websites. And that quote, is basically keeps getting more and more relevant as these people keep going down that journey. And then again, they have to marginalize me more and more the more relevant, these things become.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, we can do something about it. And like I said, all we have to do is fund peace above 0%.
100%.
That's all we have to do. And if everybody did it, so like if you guys said, hey, we're going to do a peace concert at the Stonehenge, and we're going to help such and such cause or whatever that nobody's going to argue shouldn't be helped, children or a soup kitchen or whatever. There's no government that wants to stop that. I mean, I played in Pakistan, and there was a big list of things, but there was nobody. No, the government finally agreed that our freaking 95% illiteracy needs to be you're doing the right thing coming here to address that.
Yeah.
if we did that, again, I'm just saying one thing, but I'm just going to throw that Stonehenge out. If I did something like that and you guys followed the 3 easy steps, and by the way, you can go to YouTube and put Jazz for Peace easy as ABC and see a video of how 850 of the world's most outstanding causes were able to confirm their event.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look at it, and let's just say now, okay, so now I go out to Stonehenge. Well, that Stonehenge thing, especially because of the Stonehenge thing, believe me, Jazz for Peace, we would get international publicity for it. A lot of people would know about it. And then all we have to do is find another person willing to be crazy enough for me to do something at their monument or whatever. You know what I mean? And on it goes. And again, the governments really don't mind me helping causes that make their countries better and make their communities better and all that stuff. But see, the governments don't stop me from doing that. And again, doing it over and over and over again and getting that energy in people, like, hey, that thought in people raises our human consciousness and creates more and more funding for peace.
Yeah.
So again, it's
like momentum.
Yeah.
Yes, it rides up. I mean, what if what if that boulder rolled down the hill by itself without me pushing it? I mean, holy shit. It would be amazing. Yeah. So I'm just saying there are crazy solutions right in front of us. And I hope you guys will actually consider watching those 3 easy steps and say, 100%. Hey, maybe Rick can come out here.
We'll put it in the show notes as well. We'll definitely put it in the show notes for everybody listening to go and watch.
And, you follow the 3 easy steps. I mean, basically, somebody has to be kind of the organizer per se on that end. And that person gives a comment, which is a seedling. Then we assist that person to create other interest in the community, to make that comment into roots. Yeah. And then we try to get a few other people to say, hey, let me do the same thing. Let me take this comment and these roots and, multiply them and make it a full set of roots to a tree, Yeah. And then that helps confirm the event. And from there, we have a confirmed event that publicized. Once we're publicizing it, that's how you start raising funds through sponsors, through publicity and awareness, through new and prestigious supporters, yada, 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 all these things called the branches of our empowerment tree. You see it at jazzforpeace.org. You actually see it at that other page too I gave you, that WordPress page. You see that tree. So we grow that tree, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you right now, if you grew all those trees, forget about it. It would overwhelm. It would overwhelm everybody that's interested in this. It might make people just say, hey, we just don't, this is not crazy thing, is not the way we want to go. And we have a better way for everybody. But I don't know. But the other thing is creating a trickle up economy to offset the horrors of our trickle down economy. Not to replace it, though. You still have the trickle down economy and everyone is doing well. I'm sure there's at least a handful of people that are doing well on that. Let them, get them whatever they're doing. But for everybody else who isn't doing well in philanthropy, let's say, a trickle up economy just for philanthropic purpose using the blockchain. We have that. And I just did an interview on that as well. So my point is that could also do a lot of great things because, you go to these governments that have $1 trillion budget for military, but they can't come up with $300 for pencils.
Yeah.
So my point is this trickle up economy could do that too. So my point is there are solutions and they are doable and I think allowable by society because they're not destroying anybody else. It's not like a lion coming in and killing all the cubs.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a pod, guys. I appreciate everybody being here.
Right, but there is supposed to be music on this, isn't there?
I'm going to let you play us out.
Okay.
All right. So what I would say before we end out is I think a message that needs to be said is just stay happy, stay positive, and just try and beat that negativity. And do it however you can. We try and do our bit with this podcast. Rick's trying to do his bit with everything that he does, which is a way load more than what we do. But just do your best. And I think that's all we can do, right? Just do your best.
Well, you could look into the possibility of confirming the Stonehenge event.
I will. You could.
Jazz for Peace has been to Africa 9 times.
Oh wow!
So if Rwanda can do it, if Kenya can do it, if Ghana can do it, if Uganda can do it, Stonehenge can do it. Whatever that town
100%.
is. What's the name of the town?
It's called I'll message you off air. I'll let you know. I'll let you know off air. I don't know if people
Okay.
know where I am.
Undisclosed part of
Undisclosed
the UK.
location. This is my area 51 over here. But listen, guys, thanks for watching. Please, as always, like, comment, subscribe. Check us out, and we're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, everywhere you can find us. We're there. And thank you for listening. We're now going to let Rick play us out.
All right,
Bring it
so
up
this
on
song
camera.
is called Smile, since you were telling people to try to stay cheery, right?
Let's do it.
Smile though your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. Light up your face with gladness. Hide every trace of sadness, so though a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Gladness, hide every trace of sadness. Though a tear may be ever so near, that's the time you must keep on trying. Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.
That was good.
Wow, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rick. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you.
That was incredible.
Thank you. All right.